everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. Changes are happening in the third season of the game show 25 Words or Less, which you can see Monday through Friday at 3 and 3:30 on our sister station Fox Wilmington. And we are joined now by the host of the show, Meredith Viera. Welcome to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast.
Well, thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is so great to have you. I've wanted to talk to you for so long. You've had a storied career, but let's start first on your current project, 25 Words or Less. Changes happening in this third season. Tell us about them.
Yeah, well, I'm still in my basement in New York. My commute consists of a few stairs to go down here. I can never be late for work. And we did that last season because of COVID. Everyone else is in LA on a lot in their own separate pods. And we decided this season we would continue that model. Didn't feel comfortable going back to the way things were in the first season. But we wanted to shake things up just a little bit. So this season, instead of having 2 celebrities per team, there's just 1 celebrity per team with 2 contestants, so-called civilians, I guess. And they know each other. Either they're spouses, they're siblings, they work at the same place, they're old friends. And there is a shorthand that comes to that when people know each other. So we're finding the game play is actually better because of that. And that's been fun to watch. The other change is whichever team gets to the money round, they're playing for $10,000. If they get the $10,000, they'll come back the next day. If they don't get the $10,000, they'll come back the next day. So it's great. If you win the game, no matter what happens in the money round, you come back. A little bit like the Jeopardy model. And we have 1 super fan, and no matter what happens, whatever team gets to the money round, if they win, that super fan gets $1,000 just sitting in their home, or at the very least, they get a prize. Well, and that's our way of saying thank you.
That sounds like the best way to win $10,000 sitting in your own home.
Well, they only win $1,000 if they're sitting.
Oh, they only win
home.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on, John.
Okay. Well, yeah, you got to at least take part to win the 10 grand. Why the need for the change? Did you think things need to be shaken up a little bit?
Well, I think that, I don't make those decisions. That they weren't made by me, although there was a lot of discussion. We just, because of the way things have been, we thought this is a good time to try different things on the show. And we had long considered bringing people back. How could you do that? So we figured, well, let's try it this season. Let's see. If it doesn't work, that's okay. Everybody's experimenting right now. So we just decided to adjust the format a little bit. And it's nice to get more people playing the game,
right?
As opposed to just 2 contestants per game, as it was in season 1 and 2. Now you have 4 contestants per game.
Do you miss the interaction? Because season 1, boy, you had the high fives. You had one side kind of dissing on the other when they got it. It was a real energetic kind of an atmosphere. And again, because of COVID, you were forced to do some of the things you did in season 2. But do you really miss that interaction in the studio?
Well, I'm very tactile. I love to hug people and all of that, and that game had brought out that kind of behavior and sort of the silliness of going up to somebody and in their face telling them I'm going to win, or you don't know what you're doing, and that's a fun part of the game. So yes, I do miss that. On the other hand, the format that we've come up with, you actually everybody's full screen, so you really can see their expressions more so than you did in the old format. So there's pluses and cons to both. People who've never seen season 1 think that this is the way it's always been done, in almost the Hollywood Squares model.
Yeah, well, in our newsroom, it's always playing up in the monitor up to my left, so I've always watched it since it first came on, and I really did like the dissing on the other side, because that was when you see some of these people, for the civilians, I guess you called it, to see people that are on Lisa Kudrow and some of the other ones who have been on, to see them getting into that, I think really kind of brought both sides together as a team.
Yeah, no, I know. And I think we want to go back to that when we can, when it's safe to do so. But for now, this model is working for us. And it's more important that we just keep the show alive, so that we can have season 4, 5, 6, whatever, as long as possible.
You started in local news, WJAR in Providence, Rhode Island. Was it your goal when you got started in the local news side to stay in that forever, or did you have thoughts of getting on the Today Show? Did you have thoughts of doing 60 Minutes even when you got started in your career?
You know, I got started in my career in really a weird way. I was a senior at Tufts University and floundering, essentially. I was an English major and didn't know what I was going to do next. In fact, I had gone to a secretarial school that's the summer before I graduated to learn some skills because my mom said, "You're not coming home, you're going to get a job." And I figured, okay, well, I was terrible. Thank God I didn't get a job as a secretary because I was terrible as a typist for sure, or shorthand. But I took a course for some reason at Tufts. I can't tell you why. I wasn't particularly interested in broadcast journalism, but I took the course, and the final assignment was we separated into teams. And this was radio journalism, and we each produced a documentary, and I voiced ours. And then the head of CBS Radio came and listened to critique them, came and listened, and he said, "Whose voice is that?" I said, "It's mine." And he took me on the hallway and he said, "What are you doing when you graduate?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "I do. You're going to have a big career." That was it. I said, "Really? Okay." And he hired me as an intern at CBS Radio in Boston. And then I just started luck. And I'm a serious person in the fact that I work hard. And I discovered I enjoyed it. But I never really planned ahead for it. I never intended to be in television. It was another fluke. A news director interviewed me, and it was for radio, and then he said, "Well, we have a position on TV as well. Would you be interested?" I probably was too stupid to think about it long enough to say, "Well, I don't know anything about that." So I always led with yes. And then one thing sort of led to another. And after I was in local, if I had any goal, it was 60 Minutes. I never had a goal of doing Today Show or morning TV or game or any of that talk. I always loved 60 Minutes.
Well, and it was the at the time when you and I got into it a couple of years after you did. I was into it in the early 80s. But at the time, that was the pinnacle. 60 Minutes was the pinnacle. It continues to do great storytelling. But that was where, if you were a reporter, that's where you wanted to land.
Exactly. And if you were a storyteller, and that's how I've always seen myself, I never saw myself in an anchor position. And I didn't really want to do that. I liked going out. You may not believe this, but I'm really shy. So it forced me out of my comfort zone to go to different places and to give people a voice. That always was what attracted me to this business. So what better platform than 60 Minutes for that?
Yeah, for storytelling, you don't get any better, especially in the heyday with Wallace and Reasoner and Morley Safer and all of those who were there at the time.
Ed Bradley.
And Ed Bradley as well. Some of the best storytelling in the world, in history, was done and is still being done on that program. As someone who's been in news and media now for the better part of 4 decades, what is your opinion on media today? Because when we started, it was, 3 channels. If you had cable, it was 13. And then it branched out to the cable, and then it branched out to 24/7, and now it's just mushrooming. But media has changed, and I want to know your thoughts on, is it changed for the better or for the not so good?
Well, when I first got into the business, there was something called standards and practices. And you were given a book, and there were things that, as a reporter, were expected of you. And one was objectivity. You were not the story, and you never could be the story. And I think some of that has gone away. I think so much of news isn't news anymore. It's really opinion. And that's a very dangerous and slippery slope, because people will go toward the stories that connect to the way they think. And so you're getting always a biased view of the world. And I worry about that. Plus 24/7, it's good and it's bad. Everything's breaking now. Every time you turn on breaking news, and it's not breaking, but I don't know if there's a psychological thing to that, but I find that unhealthy for the business, to be honest with you. And very celebrity driven now. So many news people, there's why are you celebrity? You really shouldn't be. It was always the opposite when I was coming up. You were the watchdogs. You didn't even associate with people that were celebrity or in the news because you had to report on them. Now so many news people are celebrities themselves, and I don't know. I think that's a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, I've always told people that if I'm moderating a political debate and 1/3 of the audience thinks I'm Democrat, 1/3 thinks I'm Republican, and 1/3 thinks I'm independent, then I've done my job.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, if everybody sort of hates you, you've done your job.
Yeah, if you get calls from both sides in the afternoon complaining about your story, you've also done your job.
Yeah.
Would you?
Also, just to add one thing to that, John, I
Sure.
think when it became, it 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 wasn't always a business. It is a business now. And
Agreed.
it's the bean counters and it's the ratings and it's driven by dollars and cents, and it shouldn't be. In the days of Paley, it was about the news. It really was. And CBS, the Tiffany network, that was what was so respected. And then the money makers came in and changed the dynamics of the business.
Would you choose TV news now as a career if you were coming out of school now?
Hey, I didn't choose it the first time. Somebody just said, so I have no idea what I would do, to be honest with you. I never thought I'd do a game show. I never thought I'd do a talk show. I fell into things. Sort of from the beginning of my career, it's been like that. And I'm just curious enough that I want to try different things. Plus, I think it's great to be able to wear a lot of hats in this business because longevity is not always that easy.
Well, you have worn tons of hats: reporter, anchor, host, executive producer, CEO of a production company, mom, wife, spokesperson. You try to raise money. And let me say, as the husband of a breast cancer survivor, thank you for all the tremendous work that you have done on behalf of patients and those who have lost their battle against cancer. My wife is now 10 years cancer-free. We lost her mom to breast cancer, so it's very important in our family. And so thank you on behalf of my family and all those who have been helped by the work you've done.
Oh, thank you, John. Yeah, I'm working with Pfizer on metastatic breast cancer, stage 4, for which there is really no cure. And it's been, for me, extremely rewarding to do because my grandmother died of breast cancer back in the day where you didn't even know what stage 4 meant, much less how to ask questions. And so this campaign that I'm involved with is about informing folks who've been diagnosed, really giving them the tools they need to find their voice. And I'm very happy to do that.
And your radio show, The ABCs of MBC, it seems to me like a lot of patients may not even know the symptoms of breast cancer or metastatic from any other diagnoses of breast cancer. So it's important from an information standpoint as well.
Absolutely. I think many people do not know what it means. And the questions to ask, really, we're trying to give them sort of a template, basically. Like, okay, you're going in, don't go in alone to your doctor. Always bring an advocate with you. And these are the kinds of questions you need to ask. And you need to form a team around you. And you are the captain of that team. But it's not just a doctor. It's nurses, it's social workers, it's people can help you handle the financial end of illness. And so that's sort of what our goal is, to educate folks so that they can be the best patient possible in terms of advocating for their health.
I think it's also important, and I've heard you discuss this from a caretaker standpoint. When my wife was going through it, if you would have told me beforehand that I was going to have to empty a bulb syringe, I would have said, no, I can't do that. But as a caretaker, you learn to do what you need to do. And I don't think from a caretaker standpoint, many people realize that is ahead either.
Yeah, I mean, certainly my husband has MS, and
Right.
he's had 2 bouts of colon cancer. And I mean, we actually are caregivers for each other. And because he's an amazing guy, but at times when he's had real struggles, I was the same way as you. My initial reaction was, I don't know that I can do this. But what you realize is that it's empowering to help. I feel like, okay, I am actually making things a little bit better in my own way. And it brings you closer together. I mean, illness can separate people too, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. But I have found that being a participant is a good thing.
Yep, and I agree. And it did bring my wife and I closer, I believe, during her journey. And we came out on the other end stronger, I believe, as a team moving forward. Are you still driven in your 60s the way you were in your 30s?
Well, in the sense that I want to have purpose, and that doesn't necessarily mean a job. It used to be sort of chasing the next thing, but I guess there's an expression about having a purposeful life, and that never changes with age. people go, well, what are you going to do when you retire? And I don't hate that word, but I think of life as a continuing journey. And I'm not getting off of life, I'm just maybe I'm going to go on another one of these little paths. The good thing about my career has been that I've always taken, to quote Robert Frost a little bit, the road less traveled. Instead of going straight, I've veered. And I think that's a good lesson that I learned and that I tell other people, particularly young people getting into the business. It's okay. You don't have to just be on the wheel and follow the wheel like a hamster. It's all right to hop off and try something new. You never know what you're going to find around that other corner.
Who's one person you've wanted to interview and never got the chance?
Maybe it's because I've interviewed so many people, but I have found the most interesting people are so-called ordinary folk, as opposed to celebrity or politician or those with an agenda. And I'm not even knocking them. Sometimes they're on the junket and they have their talking points. They've got to get through it, and they've got 50 interviews, and they're not particularly giving because they don't want to be, and I get it. But I'm always amazed by the quality of people that surround us if we just take a moment to listen. Everybody has a story. It's really true. The amount of decency that's out there, sometimes you don't believe it because we live at crazy times, but there are great people doing wonderful things and thoughtful people. And that's always been, for me, those discoveries are magical to me.
Of all the accomplishments, all of the awards, is there one that maybe when you pass by a plaque or you look up and there's something on an award that may mean a little bit more than any of the others?
Well, I got to tell you, I've won some Emmys in my time, and we used to have them on a spiral staircase, and the kids would run up and down, and they broke a bunch of them. And I realized in that moment that I'm not putting down awards at all. I think they're great, but some of the greatest pieces I've ever done did not win awards. They were not recognized. I mean, my rewards are the stories that stick with me, whether they were acknowledged or not, and really my family and the ability to figure out a way in this crazy life that we have to make it all work in a good way. So that's probably it. That might sound a little, I don't know, Pollyanna-ish, but that's the way I feel. If I had to pick one award, I did a piece on inclusion way back in the day, and I got a Kennedy Award, a Robert Kennedy Award for that. And that was a really important piece about children with disability being welcomed into classrooms, and not much had been written about it, or very few people had dealt with it, and I was really proud of that particular piece.
What makes Meredith say, boy, that was a good show?
When they let me out of my basement, to be honest with you, John, it's, I don't know, I'm sure you feel the same way when you know it. You just know it when it's there, when everything gels. It'll come together. Sometimes you can try to convince yourself that was good, but it's probably just okay. There's a magic. It's like what makes the chemistry work. I remember when we first started on The View and the show was working and everybody was trying to replicate it. You can't do that. Chemistry's there or it's not there. And it's the same with a good show. It either gels and you know it, you recognize it, or it's okay.
Well, once again, the show is 25 words or less, the third season. Everybody in southeastern North Carolina can watch it Monday through Friday, 3 and 3:30 on our sister station, Fox Wilmington. Meredith Viera, I really have enjoyed our conversation today. It was great to talk to you about the show, about your career, about your work on behalf of cancer patients, and just saying thank you for the many years that you've given us all of the entertainment, all of the news from wherever you are. We thank you, and thanks for joining me on my podcast.
Well, thank you, John, and congratulations to you as well. 30 years in the business as of next, or at least where you are right now. So you're doing something that people greatly appreciate it, so congrats.
A big thank you to Meredith Viera for taking time out of her busy schedule to join us for this week's podcast interview. Season 3 of 25 Words or Less is already underway. It's seen on television stations all across the country. And in southeastern North Carolina, once again, you can watch it Monday through Friday at 3 and 3:30 on Fox Wilmington. If you'd like to learn how to become a contestant, maybe enter the sweepstakes to become a super fan, go to 25words.com. And of course, you could follow Meredith and the show They have accounts all over social media. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please download and subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you would be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. I'd love to know what you think about our interviews. And the more feedback we have from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the podcast apps, and the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.